The glitter cannon wasn't supposed to go off until 5, but at 4:57 p.m., 3 minutes before their car turned into my driveway, it erupted like a jubilant volcano under my chandelier, peppering the lace curtains with pink stars and silver moons. A paper crown slid down the banister, a watermelon bobbed in my sink, and 22 children in paper capes chanted my name like I was a general after a victorious siege. I still hadn't raised my voice once. I didn't even clear my throat. I smiled, handed the 4-year-olds fresh napkins for their frosting, and thought, well then. If they wanted proof I'd kept my promise, they were going to get it, confetti and all. Suddenly, my daughter, her husband, and my 5 grandchildren had arrived a month earlier, unannounced and carrying suitcases like they were on the run. Just for the summer, Mom, my daughter said, breathless and bright, as if the words wouldn't land with the weight of 5 small comets. You'll watch them, won't you? We both have deadlines. It'll be good for the kids, a simple summer. You always say your neighborhood makes childhood feel like childhood. Of course I agreed. I am 64, which is not old in the mythical way TV makes it look when they put a gray wig on a 28-year-old and hand her a teacup. But it is old enough to know your spine in the morning and your knees dancing down the porch steps while someone very small wails because the blue cup betrayed them by being red. It is old enough to know that love is loud and patience must be louder. And I had 5 loud loves. The eldest is Nadia, 13, a notebook someone forgot to close, pages full of sharp comebacks she rarely says out loud and sketches of constellations on the margins of sensible lists. Then Timothy at 11, who holds his shoulders as if they're responsible for the weather. Oliver Ollie, 9, sticky with sugar and ideas. Maya at 7, small but ferocious, already fluent in diplomacy. And Leo at 4, who narrates life like he is the sportscaster of a game only he can see. A simple summer, they said. Babysit, they said. As if babysitting were a chair you sat in. I wrote the plan that first night after I tucked them into the living room fort built from my quilts and the dining chairs I'd inherited from my mother. A month is a long time if you live it one meltdown at a time. So I gave each week a name and each day a rhythm, because if I've learned anything about little planets orbiting a bigger life, it's that gravity is just a schedule with a beating heart. Week 1, we build our city. Week 2, we find our water. Week 3, we make our music. Week 4, we say thank you with a party. The eldest rolled her eyes when she saw I'd written the plan on the side of a flattened cereal box. That's kind of dramatic, Grandma. Yes, I said. I am very dramatic about breakfast. Breakfast? Ollie perked up. Is it cinnamon rolls or pancakes? Both, I said solemnly. But on different days, or the economy will collapse. That got a snort out of Nadia. Small victory. I collected those like shells. The next morning, they discovered my refrigerator was already full. Not because I'd expected 5 small comets, but because that is what grandmothers do when the weather threatens. We stock the cupboards, we label the jars, we wait. I'd made 3 different kinds of pancake batter and written rules on a whiteboard with a dry erase marker that didn't erase well, which made the rules look like I really meant them. 1. Use a tray. Trays are like boats for crumbs. 2. Water first, then juice. Your tongue will thank you. 3. Ask for what you need. I do not read minds, only messy handwriting. 4. If you can't find it, point with your eyes. I'll help. 5. I won't raise my voice this month. You don't have to either. Not even once? Maya asked, incredulous. Not even once, I promised. I'll whisper directions, or I'll hum them, or I'll write them on my hand. I will use eyebrow language. Eyebrow language? Leo said, fascinated and a little alarmed. You'll learn it by lunch, Nadia muttered. On day 1, our city grew from cardboard boxes and markers that bled through to the table, and the 9-year-old invented a bus system that failed spectacularly when the cat sat on the town square. On day 2, the 7-year-old negotiated a ceasefire between the 11-year-old's no glitter in public spaces ordinance and the 4-year-old's absolute monarchy of glitter. On day 3, we made a post office out of 2 shoe boxes and a string, and I did not raise my voice even when the envelope addressed to Grandma's brain contained 3 raisins and a plastic bead. In the afternoons, we walked to the library, which smells like promises in paperback. At the community bulletin board, Nadia discovered the planetarium schedule. Timothy discovered that returning books on time felt like winning a tiny, civilized war. The little ones discovered the puppet box, and I discovered that if you carry a pocketful of clementines and call them second breakfast, you can lead children home like fairy tale breadcrumbs without the dark woods. By the end of week 1, our city had a museum, a bakery, a municipal compost heap. That's just the bucket where you put the peels, Grandma. Yes, and how mysterious it sounds when you give it a title and a strict policy about shoes. The policy's enforcement mechanism was a laundry basket that lived by the front door and swallowed sandals like a friendly whale. I wrote fines in Monopoly money for infractions, and they paid with chores. 1 load of towels per sandal retrieved, 2 for sneakers. I did not raise my voice. I didn't need to. I had a ledger and a pen that made a satisfying click. When it rained, the rain came straight down, ancient and hardworking. The roof, which my late husband had repaired with steady, quiet hands, sang. We camped in the living room with a pile of blankets like a small mountain range and read aloud from the same book 5 nights running because the 7-year-old couldn't bear to stop at a cliffhanger and the 4-year-old couldn't bear to start after someone else. I devised a solution. We had a 2-book system, one for everyone together and one for our smallest friend, and we alternated chapters. No one cried. I mentally awarded myself a degree in advanced bedtime logistics. In week 2, we found our water, the creek that threads behind the schoolyard, the pool with the lifeguards who looked like birds at rest until their whistles shrieked, the hose that snaked across my lawn like a faithful dog. We collected pebbles with veins of quartz and named them like pets. We built boats from bark and twigs and argued gently about what constitutes an oar. We filled balloons until our thumbs went numb, and I taught them the rule. You throw at the legs, never at the face, and if someone says stop, it means stop. We invited the neighbor boys and the quiet girl from 2 houses down who speaks in questions. The 11-year-old kept score, and the 13-year-old, pretending she did not care, sat on the steps with the mail and pretended the sunlight wasn't a love letter to her skin. Water balloon battles are never about water. They're about permission to be happily reckless with rules that keep you safe anyway. Grandma? Leo whispered one afternoon, face sticky with popsicle, hair plastered to his forehead like he'd run through a gentle car wash. What's that sound? What sound? He closed his eyes to hear better. Children hear with their faces. Like a tiny box singing. I listened. Across the fence, Mr. Halvorson's wind chimes played their glassy alphabet, telling the story of a breeze. It's the air, I said. The air is singing? He opened his eyes, awed and severely suspicious. Yes. Does it know the words? It's making them up, I said. That's what summer does when you're little. It makes up the words and asks you to sing along. He nodded like I'd given him a secret job. 4-year-olds will accept secret jobs with solemn dignity you rarely see again in a lifetime. Of course there were skirmishes. The 9-year-old's Lego city fell to an act of God named Maya, who tripped over a stray cape and knocked a tower into 3 jurisdictions. The 11-year-old misplaced his book, which is to say it was under his bed, which is to say we found 7 socks, a baseball card with 1 ear chewed, and the remote control. The 13-year-old's phone vanished into a couch cushion quarry and emerged hours later with crumbs that made her reconsider her allegiance to snacks. In those moments, I stacked choices like blocks and let them pick from solid towers. We can rebuild together now, or we can draw plans and I'll help after lunch. We can keep searching in the same way and feel bad, or we can search in teams, one high, one low. We can be mad at us or mad at couch cushions. One will get you your phone, the other will give the furniture hurt feelings. They groaned at my jokes and, despite themselves, did what children do when you hand them competence like a flashlight. They used it. And I did not raise my voice. I folded towels like meditation and discovered that if I hummed a low laundry song, the rhythm soothed even the restless older child who pretended not to be listening while she reorganized the spices into constellations. Halfway through week 3, the catastrophe arrived on a Tuesday, as all catastrophes do. The catastrophe had whiskers and a sense of irony. The catastrophe was my cat, Agnes, who is a sovereign nation with poor diplomatic relations. Agnes leapt onto the kitchen island during pie day, which would have been fine had the pies been of the fruit variety. They were not. We had elected to make chocolate silk clouds, a choice I permitted because I was feeling triumphant about a successful morning at the dentist. Agnes landed in the cocoa and lifted off again, leaving paw-print constellations on the countertop, the recipe page, and Timothy's very responsible shirt. "Grandma," he said, staring at his chest like it had betrayer written on it in chocolate. "Agnes." "Too many visas, not enough border control," I said, gently relocating the cat to a sunbeam. I handed him an apron. The real catastrophe, however, was not cocoa. It was silence. Leo had been narrating the entire baking process like a sportscaster. Now Grandma is whisking. Now the whisk is dancing. The whisk is going in circles like a dizzy bee. Now the cocoa is, he stopped speaking. And then he started to cry a quiet cry that had no words, just a sound like a rubber band breaking. "Oh?" Ollie offered, uncertain. Leo's face had gone pink. One of his tiny socks was damp. The kitchen timer ticked. The pie crust burned. It took exactly 11 seconds to choose what mattered. I turned off the oven. I scooped up Leo. We went to the bathroom for dry socks and dignity and the permission to be 4 years old in a world that sometimes expects you to be a small man. "Accidents happen," I said, as I have said 1,000 times and will say 1,000 more. "You are still you." He nodded into my shoulder, and I thought again of gravity. You can be the center of a small spinning universe, or you can be the orbiting moon. This month I was the center. I could hold us. I did. The pie crust survived with a little butter therapy. The shirt went into the wash with a stain-removing paste that looked suspiciously like frosting. The children, who had been holding their breath as if I might erupt like the volcano I am not, exhaled. Later, when I passed Timothy in the hallway, he gave me a look of quiet thanks, terrible and tender, as if I had saved him from a public execution. I had done nothing extraordinary. I had merely decided not to make a small thing into a great big one. Not even once did I raise my voice. Nadia began to trust me then, not with her phone or her privacy. That would have been too easy, but with her questions. Late one night, when the house breathed sleep, she knocked on my bedroom door and stood in the hallway like a grown person who hasn't decided whether to enter. "Is it hard to be the only one who knows you're tired?" "Sometimes," I said. "Do you ever get mad?" "Of course." "You don't look it." "I plan it," I confessed. I put it in the schedule with the vacuuming and the doctor's appointments. I write a time on the calendar where I can be mad about everything and nothing. When the time comes, I boil the kettle and tell the sink. Then I feel better. She laughed, surprised. "You tell the sink?" "The sink is a very good listener." I patted the bed. "Do you want to borrow my calendar?" I have blue pen for tired and green for mad and gold for happy on purpose. She sat at the edge of the quilt and looked at her hands. "I don't like yelling," she said softly. "Me neither. My mom and dad, they're just busy. But it sounds like cars crashing sometimes." "I know," I said, though I did not say how well. "They love you. They forget to say it out loud when the deadlines chase them. We'll make some room for quiet." That's what grandmas do, make quiet rooms inside noisy days. That night I added a new rule to the whiteboard. 6. If the day is loud, we will find a quiet corner and make tea. Even if the tea is lemonade. By week 4, the children had collected friends the way porches collect afternoon, accidentally and with gusto. Their friends had names like Penny and Jax and Valentino, who insists on the full 3 syllables, and a toddler from down the street who could not be stopped by gravity or gates. They arrived in 2s and 3s, and their laughter grew like ivy on the fence, stubborn and green and unstoppable. My daughter texted me pictures of conference rooms and catered lunches and kisses blown through the phone. "We are so grateful, Mom. You have no idea." I did have an idea. It stood in my kitchen, every morning dripping cereal on the floor mat. Some nights, when the moon was the color of milk, I lay in bed and listened to the house settle and my legs complain like hardworking employees and wondered if I had made a mistake by saying yes so easily. But then morning arrived with Leo's whisper at my door, "Grandma, My feet are awake and gratitude returned in a small pair of socks. The plan for the final week had always been a party, even before my daughter shocked me with the suddenness of her arrival. Children are very good at beginnings, less so at endings. A party is a bridge between the two, a way to say, we did this, it mattered, look at the glitter on your elbows. We will still be here when the calendar turns. Just before your parents get here? Ollie asked, as we laid out the blueprint for what we began to call the Great Backyard Jubilee of early August. Just before, I said. That way the party is fresh, and they can see your joy in full fruit. They'll see the mess too, Timothy pointed out. Yes, I agreed. They will. He looked at me, considering, as if I had pulled a card from up my sleeve, and showed it to only him. Okay, he said finally, and I heard the understanding inside the word. Not the approval. The recognition of a plan. We design stations because stations convert chaos into choreography. We determined a party window, 2 o'clock to 5, Nadia decreed. No one is their best self after 5, and we invited the entire orbit, neighbors, cousins. The librarian who had slipped us 3 extra summer reading logs because our crew liked earning stickers like sailors like stars. The invitations were postcards decorated with watercolors that did not pretend to stay within lines. Station 1, the cookie construction zone. Hard hats optional, aprons provided. I pre-measured flour into jars and set out cinnamon like a tempting scandal. We practiced cracking eggs into a separate bowl first, because I do not live entirely by faith. Station 2, the slime salon. Supervised by the 11-year-old with the soul of a chemist. Clear glue, saline solution, baking soda, glitter for those with signed permission slips, signed by me, with myself. Station 3, the paper crown atelier. Nadia's domain. She'd cut gold and colored cardstock into strips and designed templates so the little ones could wear monarchy. She'd even made a tiny stamp that said atelier, because words are costumes and she is fluent in dressing. Station 4, the cardboard arcade. Ollie had engineered a skee-ball contraption that defied physics and spilled prizes, gum, pencils, rub-on tattoos, like a cheerful slot machine. He had also constructed a mini golf course with plastic cups for holes and 2 enthusiastic flamingos guarding the final green. Station 5, the water balloon orchestra. Timed releases to minimize tears and maximize laughter. Timothy made a chart. And, because a party without a ridiculous centerpiece is just a well-organized afternoon, we decided on the great fruit ship launch, a hollowed-out watermelon carved like a galleon, sails cut from dish towels, toothpicks hoisting flags with everyone's initials. The ship would launch ceremoniously into the kiddie pool. We would cheer. We would eat the cargo, melon balls and blueberries and grapes stolen by the toddler who could not be stopped by gates or gravity. The morning of the Jubilee, the house woke up like a stage on opening night. I tied my hair back with a ribbon I'd been saving since 1997 for a moment worth tying your hair back. I set out recycling bins the way a general sets out supply lines. I put a stack of clean towels by the back door, a tray of Band-Aids by the lemonade, a basket of socks near the trampoline because children like to fly in fresh socks. At noon, I took a breath and put the brisket in the oven, even a glitter-approved party needs protein, and made the macaroni salad my daughter says tastes like 4th of July. At 1, I carried the glitter cannon I'd found in the clearance bin at the party store to the living room and placed it gently, like an egg about to hatch. At 1:30, Nadia asked, "Are you sure about the cannon?" "I am profoundly sure," I said. "It is labeled biodegradable confetti. If the label lies, I will lodge a complaint with the universe." At 1:58, the first guests arrived. Valentino, solemn as a judge, presenting a homemade bouquet of crayons bound with tape, Penny in a polka-dot dress that had never met a puddle it didn't love, Jax in a cape that turned him into a comet. The toddler toddled, triumphant. By 2:15, the backyard looked like a carnival designed by kindly raccoons. I moved from station to station like a festival mayor. I replaced paper towels, tied aprons, loose-stuck balloons from the gutter, and blessed the macaroni salad. The older kids took ownership of their domains with the authority competence grants. Nadia adjusted crowns as if she were fitting feelings, not paper. Timothy kept a stopwatch on his lanyard and said, 3 minutes until the next balloon wave, and the children obeyed because he held the stopwatch like a promise. Ollie, devout engineer, calibrated cardboard ramp angles with a butter knife and a prayer. At 3, the watermelon ship launched to a roar. At 3:10, Agnes the cat leapt onto the crown table and passed through the parade like a dignitary, pausing to allow toddlers to admire, darting away before admiration became pursuit. At 3:20, I realized the glitter cannon safety pin was an insult to ergonomics and asked Nadia to demonstrate her teenage hands. She did, and I tucked the cannon into the corner by the piano, where it would wait to bless the finale. It would have been enough, that afternoon, to watch them. Enough to see the science of slime and the art of cardboard and the diplomacy of crown fittings. Enough to sit on the porch with lemonade that sweated into my palm and listen to the water balloon orchestra's crescendos and sighs. Enough to know I had kept 5 planets circling, not with gravity, but with kindness and sharp pencils and a belief in children's ability to be their most delightful selves when given shape and safety. But the thing about enough is that sometimes it keeps multiplying simply because joy refuses to stop at the edges of what you prepared for. At 3:50, Jax's cape caught on the flamingo and pulled it onto the green, which collapsed the cup, which spilled the gum, which led to a diplomatic incident resolved only by counting out the gum into fair shares. At 4:05, the slime salon experienced a glue spill that briefly united everyone in panic and then in laughter as we learned that shaving cream can right many wrongs. At 4:20, the toddler stuck one blueberry up his nose and then sneezed it back out into his own hand with awe so complete it felt like witnessing a new religion. I did not raise my voice. I lifted my eyebrows. I whispered so small that they had to lean toward me to hear me, and in leaning toward me, they leaned away from the edge of disaster. Whispering is contagious. At 4:57, the glitter cannon sang. It's a small thing, the sound a spring makes when it decides to spring. But in a room with high ceilings and anticipations and 22 children and one grandmother who had promised a finale, it sounded like a tiny miracle happening exactly on time. Pink stars. Silver moons. They fell slowly, not like rain but like a thought. The 4-year-olds opened their mouths to catch paper. The 13-year-old grinned with her whole face and did not remember to roll her eyes. The 7-year-old raised her arms like a ballerina blessing the weather. For a moment, the room was a snow globe of approval. That is when the headlights swept the living room wall. The car door thudded. 1 car door. Then 2. The front gate squeaked the way it always has, even though I oil it because I like to hear that little trumpet announce arrivals. My daughter's laugh came down the walk like she'd left a meeting and walked into a story. My son-in-law's voice followed, weary and relieved. We're here, we made it, we. They stepped into the house and found their home in a pile of rubbish and chaos. Let me be precise, so as not to pretend I hadn't planned every confetti star's path like a general placing artillery. The kitchen island looked like a baking show after the timer ran out. 2 paper crowns had migrated into the punch bowl. The dining chairs wore apron capes. The hallway runner bore a parade of damp sock footprints leading triumphantly from the back door to the towels basket. The sitting room's piano, which I tune every Thanksgiving whether it asks for it or not, was newly adorned with moons. The cat sat like a queen on the arm of the couch and blinked inscrutably. The air carried the scents of cinnamon, wet grass, lemon, and a hint of shaving cream because slime owes nobody an apology. What happened? My daughter whispered, as if the walls were listening. Joy, Timothy said, very seriously. A regulated amount. Jubilee, Ollie added, showing off the cardboard arcade as if he'd built Rome and not 4 excellent ramps with tape and hope. Oh, my daughter said again, quieter. She looked from the glitter to my face to her children, who were vibrating with the kind of happiness that cannot be faked for cameras or grandparents or anyone. Her eyes shone, and then she remembered the adult script and aimed for firmness. Mom, this is. Evidence, I offered. Evidence. She couldn't help herself. She laughed. Then she sobered again. Of what exactly? Of a month that happened, I said gently. And happened well. She turned to take it in, like a judge in a courtroom of macaroni salad and crowning ceremonies. The room waited. Even Agnes, who cares for nothing but the sun and her own forepaws, looked alert. Evidence, Nadia echoed, softer, as if she liked the sound of a word that made a mess respectable. That's a lot of children, my son-in-law said faintly. He tugged at his collar like it had grown tighter on the walk from the car to the couch. 22, Timothy supplied. 22, my son-in-law repeated, as if he'd been hit with a number so earnest it left a mark. Authorized and rostered, Nadia added. We have name tags. Name tags, my daughter said, because sometimes adults do nothing more than pass the words back and forth until the truth softens enough to swallow. I did not press them. I did not deliver the speech I had prepared in case they arrived full of criticism. The speech said, I love these children, but there are 5 of them, and I am a person with a back. The speech said, help is not a luxury, it is a railing on the stairs. The speech said, you get to call me mom, but you also have to call me human. I did not deliver it because I didn't need to. The room, honest and chaotic, had already spoken for me. Grandma didn't even shout one time, Maya announced, sounding like she had swallowed a trumpet. Not even once, my daughter asked, turning to me sharply as if she'd caught me in some sort of conspiracy of kindness. Not even once, I said. I reached for the broom, leaned against the wall like a companion. I used eyebrow language. Eyebrow language, my son-in-law repeated, like he was filing it under things we will never understand about this woman, but respect anyway. They stood there while the children showed them their stations and their crowns and their cardboard economy. They stood there while I handed them plates and a choice of lemonade or iced tea because adults also need regulated joy. They stood there as the toddler presented them with a blueberry. He had not sneezed this time. They watched their eldest close ranks around a younger sibling who was tired and not admitting it. They watched their 11-year-old check his stopwatch even though the party had moved into the part where nothing is scheduled, but everything is on time. Something moved across their faces, embarrassment, gratitude, fear, relief, a map of everything that had kept them away and everything that pulled them back. Work is a jealous god. It consumes worship and offers you calendar invites instead of comfort. Children are also jealous gods. They demand worship, repay it in crumbs and sticky hugs, and then fall asleep on the couch in a confetti snowfall. Parents stand in the doorway between gods and try not to forget themselves. I don't know how you did it, my daughter said finally, honest enough to make me forgive her entirely in that moment for arriving with such suddenness and leaving me with 5 small planets and a promise. I truly don't. With lists, I said. And snacks. And rules, Timothy added, tapping the whiteboard with authority. Trays are like boats for crumbs. And Nadia hesitated, then pushed ahead, quiet. And quiet, I agreed. Sometimes the loudest thing is a choice to speak softly. That night, after the jubilee had run its course and the last crown had fallen behind the couch and the toddler had been reclaimed by his parents and Agnes had returned to the sun, the house exhaled. My daughter and her husband stayed to help sweep and rinse and put the house back into itself. They wiped the counter as if the counter had become an altar. They shook out the rugs onto the porch and watched confetti drift like moths. They tucked their oldest's hair behind her ear as if she were still little enough to allow it. When the children were asleep, the 4 of us sat at the table with tea. We looked like conspirators. We were. We should have planned better, my son-in-law said, voice rough with the exhaustion that comes from seeing your life and knowing it needs rearranging. We just, thank you. Thank you. You don't have to thank me, I said. But you do have to hear me. Okay, my daughter said quickly, and I saw in her eyes the 13-year-old she had been, scared of getting it wrong, determined to get it right. I will always say yes to these children, I said. Always. But 5 is not a number one person should hold alone for a month. Next summer, if you want them here, and I hope you do, you will hire a nanny for days when your work pulls you like a tide. Or you will make a schedule and be here for your own jubilee. A grandmother is not a plan. She is a person. I expected arguments. I expected, we can't afford it, or it's only 1 more year, or but you're so good at this, or we thought it would be easier for everyone. Instead, my daughter put her head in her hands and laughed a laugh that sounded like someone who had been holding her breath for a year and finally remembered oxygen. "Of course," she said. "Of course, Mom. What were we thinking? We'll figure it out." We already looked up agencies in the car on the way over, my son-in-law confessed, eyes on his tea. "After your texts about the roster and the fruit ship launch. We believed you. We saw you. We'll hire someone good. You'll get the mornings you want and the afternoons you want, and we'll take the rest." "Good," I said. I made a note on my calendar in gold pen. "Next year. Help." The note gleamed like a promise. They went home with sleeping children draped over their shoulders like the most precious burden in the world. The house was quiet except for the wind chimes and the refrigerator, which hums like a steady friend. I stood in the living room and looked at the last of the confetti shining on the piano in the porch light. I did not sweep it. I left it there like the last star in the morning. In the weeks that followed, the story of the great backyard jubilee of early August spread through our small neighborhood like a rumor that happens to be true. Parents sent pictures of their children in lopsided crowns, asleep on couches. The librarian taped a paper moon to the summer reading banner and wrote, "Evidence." Mr. Halvorsen offered to fix the squeaky gate even though I told him I liked it and had constituted it as an instrument. The toddler's mother apologized for the blueberry, then smiled and said, "Honestly, it was majestic." When autumn knocked politely and the first day of school put everyone back into shoes that pinched and schedules that outsourced spontaneity, the house returned to its smaller rhythms. But it did not return to the quiet from before. Something had shifted in the floorboards, in the air that sings. My daughter texted me weekly now, "Thursday, nanny 9 to 3, we'll pick up at 4 and do dinner at yours?" Sometimes they dropped them off with calendars and snacks organized, like people who had become competent at the thing they cared about. Sometimes they stayed all day, and I watched from the porch as my daughter taught the 11-year-old to make her favorite soup, and my son-in-law fixed the hinge on the laundry door that had complained for years. Nadia started an astronomy club that met in my backyard on clear nights to identify things, Orion, Cassiopeia, the complicated heart of being 13. Timothy joined the swim team and invented a pre-meet ritual where he ate exactly 6 grapes and tied his right shoe twice, because rituals are bridges over worry. Ollie received a commendation at school for creative engineering solutions, which he accepted gravely as if the flamingos had written the letter themselves. Maya learned to braid with patience that astonished even her. And Leo learned eyebrow language. One afternoon in late October, as leaves fell in a slow confetti the trees never have to sweep, I found a pink star under the couch. I held it between my thumb and forefinger and felt how light it was and how heavy, like all evidence that joy occurred. I stuck it to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a strawberry. When the children came over after school and saw it, they cheered like the cannon had gone off again. "Grandma," Leo said, climbing into my lap as if the word itself were a ladder. "You kept your promise." "I did," I said, kissing his hair, which still smelled like sunshine and the faint, permanent sweetness of summer. "And next summer?" "Next summer," my daughter answered from the doorway, her voice steady and glad, "will be better. There will be a nanny and a calendar and party station volunteers. We'll remember that you are a person." Also, my son-in-law added, "Because men who have learned to survive glitter deserve the last word sometimes, we will hire someone else to deal with the glitter cannon." We all laughed. Even Agnes looked like she might consider it. That night, after the dishes were done and the house had become a cat and a clock again, I wrote one last thing on the whiteboard, even though the month had ended and the Jubilee's confetti had finally given itself up to the vacuum's patient appetite. 7. If you do it with love and a list, it will look messy and be perfect. The next morning, Timothy asked if he could take a picture of the whiteboard for his life folder, which is a real thing in the mind of an 11-year-old who keeps a stopwatch and believes in charts. Maya copied the rule in her careful first-grader hand and taped it above the shoe basket. Nadia rolled her eyes and took a picture too. Ollie tried to turn it into a cardboard sign for the next Jubilee, already drafting ramp angles in his mind. Leo traced the letters with his finger, whispering them as if the words were a spell. A month earlier, they had appeared at my door, sudden as weather. I had opened my arms and my calendar. I had said yes. I had kept my promise. Not once did I raise my voice. I had gathered their days into order and joy and mess. And just before their parents arrived, I had held a party for their children and all their friends. The house had transformed into a glorious, compassionate chaos that told the truth better than any speech I could make. Next year, they will think about hiring a nanny to help me. Not because I demanded it in anger, but because the evidence of a month well lived said it kindly, with stars and moons and macaroni salad. Because love is loud, but respect is louder. Because a grandmother is not a plan. Because the glitter cannon went off 3 minutes early, and it was perfect.
Your watch to the end. Be click here. You will hear another story from my grandma.